and welcome to FPL Mate, your best mate for fantasy Premier League content for the 2023-24 season. My name is Dan. It is time for double game week 28 and we need to make some big FPL decisions. So let's rank some players today in a tier list. Guys, if you enjoy this one, make sure you drop a like, do subscribe if you're new around here. Let's get started. So, 5 categories. We've got to put all of these players onto this tier list depending on how good they are for FPL transfers for Game Week 28. Starting with the 30 most popular transfer in at time of recording. Let's get going with Semenyo. So, our first double Game Week player of the video. And it is a 4.5 million forward. I don't think he is too bad of a transfer. I'm going to put him somewhere between optional and good transfer. I'm actually going to drop him in optional transfer because I do think that he is okay. I wouldn't necessarily expect him to get huge FPL returns. His numbers aren't fantastic. He is the kind of player who sometimes gets rotated a little bit, maybe coming off early in those matches. And although, yeah, we have seen a couple of FPL returns from him over the last couple of months, I just don't think he is a big hitting player that necessarily we really want to fully take advantage of this double game week. Remember, guys, Bournemouth do blank in Game Week 29, so any Bournemouth players you bring in now, they've got to be big hitters depending on what your chip strategy is. Of course, as always, guys, everything I say today is chip dependent, team dependent. What you're doing with your team is going to definitely matter. Next up, a doggy. I'm going to put him in somewhere between good transfer and optional. I think if you want to go for an doggy, I think you can afford to wait one more game week. So for that reason, I am going to put him in the optional category. Spurs do play against Aston Villa away from home this week, which is obviously a very, very tough game. Aston Villa scoring a lot of goals. But Odoggy, his attacking numbers are pretty good. And I think he's a really good, probably one of the better defensive options for game week 29, blank game week 29. So Odoggy, for now, an optional, but we can maybe reassess him very shortly. Isak, I think, is probably low optional / avoid. He is always a good pick when he is in the team, but when we look at this game against Chelsea away from home, it's okay. It's not too bad. After that, the fixtures do get a lot better after the blank, but again, we have got that blank to contend with, and I feel like there's just bigger priorities to go for at the moment than an Isak. Next up, Tavernier. I think I'm going to put him good transfer, but no higher. He's probably the second best player for Bournemouth in terms of attacking numbers. However, he is significantly worse in those numbers than Solanke. It has to be said. I know a lot of you guys probably looking for some other potential Bournemouth attackers to go for. Tavernier would probably be the only Solanke alternative that really stands out at all, but please be aware that this is not a good long-term pick. And, you know, even looking at this double game week, can we really expect more than maybe a 5-pointer from him just from appearance points? Well, maybe he sneaks in there with an assist, gets himself up to 8 or 9 points potentially, but I wouldn't expect any more than that from him this week, to be perfectly honest, and maybe as a transfer that you'd have to remove again. So he's a good transfer, but I think we can probably do better if we look at the bigger picture here. Next up, Kelleher. He's going straight in a void, but I do want to clarify here, it's only because he plays Manchester City, who are free scoring at the moment, and then blanks after that. Now, after Game Week 30, Kelleher is going to be probably the best ever pick you can ever have in your FPL team. And if you're in a wild card and you can afford to bring in Kelleher and leave him on your bench for the next 2 game weeks, I think he's going to be a fantastic pickup. But if you're just using your regular transfers, Kelleher would not be a player I would be going for. Now, Maddison is a player who's a little bit more tempting. I know he only plays a single game week this week, but over the next 2, it's a pretty decent little run for him because he's got Aston Villa this week and Fulham the following week in the blank game week 29, which is very nice. Obviously, he's a very creative player who is going to be getting those assists from free kicks, corners, you know, all of that kind of stuff, and being creative on the field as well, taking a lot of long shots, and was a really, really solid asset earlier on in the season. And I think he can potentially recapture that. So, good transfer. I think he's pretty decent. Next up, a player I think I'm going to put in great transfer, and that's going to be Zabarnyi. Now, remember this name. It's not a player we've spoken about too much in FPL before, but we need this new information. Obviously, with Senesi getting injured, we have got to look elsewhere for Bournemouth defenders. And if you're looking for the cheap and nailed-on guy, then Zabarnyi is that guy. With this double game week against both Luton Town and Sheffield United, clean sheets are going to be up for grabs. We know Bournemouth have some of the best defensive numbers in the Premier League. They showed that a little bit with their clean sheet against Burnley in Game Week 27, and I think that can continue. So for a 4.4 million defender, you can't really go wrong here as long as you can afford to bench him in Game Week 29 or maybe free hit in Game Week 29. Then this is going to be the guy who may take you beyond that as well. I think he's going to be really good for the future, with Bournemouth looking like they will have a potential double game week in 34 as well. So decent fixtures after the blank, double game week now, and a double game week in 34 as well. Zabarnyi is that cheap defender to have in your squad for the long term. He really, really is. Next up, Erling Haaland. And I can't believe I'm saying this, but I think I'm going to put Haaland in optional. If you don't have him already, I don't think there's a huge real temptation to bring him in when his next 3 fixtures are Liverpool, title contender, that's away from home, then a blank, and then Arsenal. This run of 3 fixtures, including the blank, is pretty much the worst you can get as an FPL asset, and it's going to take that much to drop Haaland down into the optional category. He needs to have a run of 3 fixtures this bad in order to put him in this category, but that's what's happened. He is optional. I don't think if you don't have him already, I don't think I would go for him. I think I would look elsewhere and then possibly look to bring Haaland back in from game week 31 onwards, where he plays Aston Villa and then has some nice fixtures after that. So right now, Man City players, I'm sorry, they are just optional as far as I'm concerned. Now, next up, Gabriel. I think he's always a good player to have in your squad. I know we did just speak about that Man City versus Arsenal game in game week 30, but Arsenal have already kept a clean sheet against Man City, and those games between Arsenal and City do seem to be a little bit cagier, a little bit more low scoring. Is Gabriel an absolute priority transfer this week if you don't have him already? Possibly not, but he is one of those long-term essential players that you want to have in your squad regardless, probably for the rest of the season, so he's got to be at least a good transfer. Next up, Cole Palmer. At 5.7 million, at this cheap price tag, I think he is going to be still a good transfer because this next fixture is against Newcastle. And we all know right now, maybe the Wolves game maybe slightly changed our minds a little bit. But in general, over the past couple of months, Newcastle have just been the worst defence in the Premier League. Palmer is the guy from Chelsea who will get all of the attacking returns, goals, assists, penalties, whatever. He gets everything, doesn't he? We saw another return for him in game week 27. And against Newcastle, you do feel that he could genuinely go off. So if you have got maybe a wild card coming up soon or a game week 29 free hit loading, then Palmer is going to be a really, really nice selection for your team, not just for now, but for the long term as well. Chelsea, a team, by the way, who will have 2 double game weeks between now and the end of the season, which is absolutely huge. So Palmer, again, another real nice long-term player that you definitely want to have in your squad. Saliba up next. We're going to put him in a similar category to Gabriel. I'm going to drop him down 1 lower than Gabriel, though, to be honest. Although I love the Arsenal defensive double up, I don't think you need to do it right now. If you've got one of Gabriel and Saliba, that's probably going to be good enough. This is probably not the game week to do the double up if you haven't got that double up already. But yeah, like I say, a long-term Arsenal defense are probably the only reliable guy. So yeah, I do like these picks in general. Next up, Ross Barkley, and I'm going to be pretty controversial here and put him in the optional category. I know probably people maybe want me to put him in low good. Maybe we can sneak him in there. Genuinely, though, even though he plays 3 games in the next 3, and of course, this is, again, going to depend on your strategy, Barkley is just not really putting up very good attacking numbers at the moment. He really, really is. And kind of tracking at maybe 0.2 expected attacking returns per game, which even if he has, 2 games this game week, you still kind of maybe you'll be fortunate to get even 1 attacking return from Barkley, really. So he's just not looking like a great FPL asset at the moment. Maybe playing a little bit deeper, obviously, with some of those injuries to the likes of Lokonga and Nakamba in the Luton Town squad. So yeah, he looks good because he plays 3 fixtures in the next 2, which is obviously a thing that only Luton Town can say, but I don't think he's a particularly strong pick. If you're going for him super short term, I get it. If you're planning game week 30 or 31 wildcard, then I get it. But this is why these videos are so hard to make at this moment, because everyone's got slightly different strategies going on. And yeah, Barkley we just know is just not a long-term pick. We really know that for sure. And even over the next 2 game weeks, I mean, I'm not expecting too much from him, to be honest. I would be surprised to see him get more than 1 attacking return in the next 2 game weeks. And I think we can find some other players who can perhaps do a little bit better than that. Saka, again, he's going to go like good transfer probably because it's just not really the time to buy Arsenal players if you don't have them already. But at the same time, they're just great players to own long term. Do I think Saka can outscore a player like Barkley in the next 2 game weeks, despite the fact that Saka only has 1 fixture? I kind of actually do, but he's a lot more expensive to reflect that. But the good thing about Saka is he's just that long-term pick. So he's a good transfer, but again, we can do better, and that's what we're looking to do in this video. We want to get some of those players more in the great transfers and the must-buys. Those are the kind of players that we want to go for, and Saka is just not that right now. So if you don't have him, then you probably don't buy him, but if you do, I think it's fair enough as well. Gordon, I think it's a decent player at his price tag. We're going to throw him in the optional category. I think, if you want to go for him, you absolutely can. The fixtures are okay. The price is very, very good. He's showing a little bit of form again, which is quite nice. So we're going to put him around that area. I think that's pretty nice for him. I think he's going to be a decent long-term pick as well. And I'm backing Newcastle to have a double game week in 34 as well. So if you're planning ahead, then Gordon is going to be a nice player to plan ahead with. Next up, Neto. definitely the best goalkeeper to go for this game week. He's going to be the highest scoring goalkeeper this week, in my opinion. I mean, just looking at that double game week with Sheffield United and Luton. Bournemouth, we spoke about them being a good defence, but I am not going to put him above Zabarnyi. I'm going to put them very similar, kind of similar areas, because I think there are some slightly better goalkeeper options emerging for the longer term. Players like Kelleher, I would rather have in the long term than a Neto, and with Zabarnyi, he's much easier to rotate. To be honest, a Neto and Kelleher like double up this week would be very, very nice to have, but at the same time, that doesn't cover you for game week 29. So I do like Neto a lot for this week. I think he's a decent goalkeeper to own long term as well, but longer term, I think there might be better options that do emerge in the likes of Kelleher. Next up, Darwin. Would I go for Darwin right now against Man City and then a blank? Probably not. So let's throw him in the avoid category. I mean, look, he's Darwin. He can score against any team. He is that chaos player, of course. And, you know, Liverpool might do okay this game week, but I think you can wait. Again, Liverpool players are just players. You can afford to wait till game week 30 before bringing them in, and that's probably what I would advise you guys do. Senesi's going straight to avoid. He picked up a hamstring injury, unfortunately, yesterday. Guys, anyone who is like me, who went 1 week early on Senesi, hoping to get the clean sheet points in game week 27 and a great double game week player for game week 28 as well, we have been really, really screwed over by Lady Luck, which is just one of those things. But now we know that Senesi's got a hamstring injury. I just cannot recommend buying him. He is an avoid. Next up, Fabian Schär. Are we back in Fabian Schär now that he has got a nice assist and a clean sheet? Probably not. Newcastle defenders are just too expensive, and also the fact that you know, we just have this you know, okay fixture against Chelsea. It's not great, really. And then a blank game week. Do we think we can maybe go for some Newcastle players from game week 30 onwards? I think that's something to think about. Definitely something to think about, but I'm not fully convinced right now. Next up, Muniz. 4.5 million Brazilian striker. I'm going to put him, I think, somewhere around optional at least. I mean, he has got a fixture next game week. He is in red hot form. Like, he really is. He's got something like 6 attacking returns in 4 game weeks, something crazy like that. He is in such good form at the moment. He's found himself nailed on for Fulham. And, you know, this week, Fulham away against Wolves, I don't love it, but at the same time, Wolves just lost quite considerably to Newcastle. And the next game week, Fulham play against Spurs. Now, Spurs, for all we say about their attack, defensively, they are not that strong. And I do back Muniz to actually score in that blank game week 29. So if you're looking for a cheap 4.5 forward, I think I prefer Muniz to Semenyo. If we're looking over a 2 game week period in particular, then Muniz and Semenyo, I think Muniz will score more points over the next 2 game weeks. Same amount of fixtures for both of those players, if you think about it this way. So just taking a slightly longer term view there. But yeah, Fulham, if you need to have that backup 4.5 million forward who actually provides very decent value for money and actually can score FPL points, there's probably no better, you know, baseline cheap player to buy in the game right now. So, yeah, shout out to Muniz. He is doing pretty well. Probably more of a player you would look to buy if you needed to free up some cash, make a downgrade to free up some money, or potentially if you're on a wild card, that's the kind of, you know, ways you might go for Muniz in your team. Van Dijk against Man City, I'm not expecting a clean sheet, so I think he's got to go in the avoid category. Another player we probably look again at in game week 30. Areola, decent fixture this game week, but please do not be confused by the fact he scored, he saved a penalty in game week 27. Once again, West Ham conceding countless chances. I think they conceded another game with like 2.7 XG conceded in that game, which is a lot. It really, really is a lot. So, yeah, Areola, not a great goalkeeper, really, for FPL. West Ham, still a really bad defence. And after this Burnley game, the fixtures are horrible, horrible. Even if you're looking for a goalkeeper to cover you in game week 29, if you already have him, fine. But, you know, it's a game against Aston Villa. That's going to be a really tough one for West Ham, and I'm not really backing him to keep any clean sheets anywhere in the near future outside of perhaps game week 28. So do not let that penalty save and bonus points fool you into thinking that suddenly West Ham and Areola are a good defence. They are really, really not. Romero. I'm going to drop him into the avoid category as well. I'm going to put him high avoid, though, I guess. I wouldn't go for Romero personally. Not really as much attacking threat from open play as a player like a doggy. Obviously, every time Romero scores one of his random goals, everyone gets that goes on a hype with him. But away against Aston Villa, I just would not want to touch that at all for a defender, really, unless there is decent open play attacking threat, which Udogie has to a degree. But even Udogie, he is not super high on this tier list either. So Romero and Udogie, Doggy, not super keen on them, but particularly Romero, would not be looking to bring him in this game week. Next game week, a little bit more optional, but I would like to see a stronger defense from Spurs before doing that. Douglas Luiz, good transfer. I think I would say he is a good transfer. You know, decent fixture against Spurs coming up next. And then after that, pretty nice game week against West Ham in game week 29 as well. On penalties, obviously creating a little bit from those set pieces as well and scoring some random goals here and there as well. But Douglas Luiz is such a tough one. I think he's a decent transfer. I do think he's a good transfer. But we're not going to put him any higher than that. He is just decent and nothing more than that. Unlike his teammate, Ollie Watkins, who I think is a great transfer. I really do. Yeah, I think he's, you know, if you don't have him already, he's probably the priority pick, probably of all FPL assets. If you are not free hitting in game week 29, I think if you are free hitting in game week 29, you can maybe afford to actually avoid Watkins potentially. But yeah, in general, he's just been such a great FPL asset. Good game against Spurs this week, another good game against West Ham next game week, and he's been in such amazing form recently that you can't doubt him anymore. You really can't. You really can't. Maybe from game week 31 where he plays Man City, we might rethink Watkins a little bit, particularly if team value and budget is an issue. But right now, Watkins is a very important player to have. Not quite must buy, but he's very important indeed. Next up, Phil Foden. Maybe we should give him the Haaland treatment because Liverpool blank Man City, Arsenal is just not a great run for Man City despite Foden's form. But at a slightly cheaper price tag, and by slightly cheaper, I mean 6.4 million cheaper. That is so much cheaper. And slightly better form than Haaland, you might say, recently. I'm going to put him in the optional category. So we'll put him there alongside Haaland. I don't think I'd go for Foden, to be honest, but yeah, I definitely see the appeal. Next up, Doughty. Doughty, is he a great transfer? I don't know. I think he has got to be at least good. I'm going to be maybe a little bit generous here and put him in the great transfer category if you are not free hitting in game week 29, because a double game week this week and a fixture this game, the following game week is very nice indeed. Doughty, obviously, a fantastic creative asset, so you don't have to just worry about, you know, trying to keep clean sheets. Believe me, if you are bringing in Luton Town players and hoping for clean sheets, it might not go your way. For this game week, probably going for a Bournemouth defender is maybe a higher priority, particularly game week 29 free hitters. But looking to cover the next two game weeks, Doughty is pretty much as good as it can get for the next two game weeks. You might want to, he might be another one of those players though who you wildcard out of. You sell him on your wildcard in 30 or 31, or maybe if you are on a wildcard right now, you probably do go for Doughty, to be honest. So, yes, we'll put him in there. Of course, guys, we did upload a full wildcard strategy video for Game Week 28 yesterday. So, if you are thinking about wildcarding this game week, then go check that video out. Doughty is in the team alongside a couple of these other players in the great transfer category. And let's go with a big one today, guys. Let's go for a big one. Must buy Solanke. Dominic Solanke. Are we all in agreement? He is a must-buy for this week. Are we all in agreement that he's probably going to be our captain this week? And I'm sure a few of you guys will also be triple captaining Solanke as well. I don't know if I'm 100% convinced by the Solanke triple captain right now, but still, it's definitely going to be an option if nothing else. So, Solanke, double game week against Sheffield United and Luton Town. Both at home. That is phenomenal. He's a player on penalties. He's a player that dominates the numbers for Bournemouth. Can he go big this game week? Are we looking at a 20-point haul from Solanke? Can he do everything that we thought Erling Haaland could do in game week 25? I don't want to hype up Solanke that much. He's not the second coming of Christ, but he is a darn good FPL asset, even when he doesn't have a double game week. So we are going to shove him straight in the must-buy. If you don't have Solanke, you are going to be in trouble this game week. Believe me, guys. Believe me. And next up, we are going to throw in Jared Bowen. I think he is probably a good transfer for the reasons that he has fixtures over the next two. You know, he has fixture in game week 29. It's against Aston Villa. Showing a little bit more form since we've seen the likes of Paqueta come back into the West Ham team. Kudus as well, obviously big boost to the West Ham attack, but still not 100% convinced by West Ham at the moment, so I can only put him in good transfer, no longer than that. The fixtures are decent, but is he a long-term asset we want to hold? Not really sure about that one, so we'll put him there, no higher. Next up, Heung-min Son, the hype pick from last game week, is going to go, I think, into the great transfer category. Maybe even slightly above Watkins. I do think Son is a phenomenal, fantastic pickup. I think this game against Aston Villa suits Son's style as well, and I do think Son is going to be playing as a central striker once again, likely on penalties as well, out of position, as since he is listed as a midfielder, getting those extra points for clean sheets and goals. And after Game week 28 and game week 29, we actually decent couple of fixtures that do suit him a little bit. After that, we've got Luton Town in Game Week 30 as well. So he's also going to be a potential captain option for Game Week 30 as well. These Spurs players are really nice pickups, particularly in the attacking positions. And Son is definitely a player who is found himself back in form with the goal last game week. Had a few chances to get some other returns in that game as well. Coming close to scoring again and, you know, created a really good chance for Timo Werner, I believe it was, which Werner unfortunately missed. But still, Son, great transfer. You know, seriously consider bringing in this player this game week, particularly, again, if you are not free hitting in Game Week 29, Son is going to be one of the most, if not the most important player for you to bring in this game week with the next 2 game weeks in consideration and after that as well. Which leaves one more player to add to the tier list, and it is going to be Carlton Morris. Once again, we're talking about him. Let's put him in the... great transfer category. I'm going to put him beside Son and Watkins. I can't quite believe we are doing this, guys. Imagine a world while Carlton Morris is being spoken about in the same conversations as Heung-min Son and Watkins. This is what FPL does, guys. And with the next 2 game weeks, double game week, and then actually having a fixture in 29, it's the perfect combo for Luton Town players. So we're looking for that one Luton Town player that can carry us over the next 2 game weeks. And I think it could be Carlton Morris because, one, he's, you know, in good scoring form, and Luton Town are a team that can score goals despite their defensive fragilities. He's also on penalties, and in a double game week, that's double the chance of getting those penalty returns. I think he is a fantastic pick. I really, really do. And if you are looking to go into the next 2 game weeks without a free hit, then hey, maybe this guy is the guy to bring in. Nottingham Forest, remember, in Game Week 29, so a strong fixture there as well. The fixtures for Luton Town this game week are Crystal Palace and Bournemouth. Not too bad, really, are they? So overall, yeah, kind of like it. Kind of like Morris, but he cannot quite take the crown from Solanke in the must-buy category. So there you go, guys. That is where we are going to place all of the players in today's tier list video. Solanke taking the top spot for this game week with Son, Morris, Watkins, Zabani, Neto, and Doughty all coming in second in that second category. All of these suggestions, of course, are going to be chip strategy dependent. So yeah, I know there is no one answer that fits everyone, but hopefully we've explained enough for each of these players that it kind of makes sense. Guys, let me know if you agree with the placements of these players, and if you think I've got anything wrong, please do let me know in the comments, and yeah, maybe we can have some discussion there. And yeah, thank you for humoring me for another tier list video. If you wouldn't mind dropping a like before you disappear, that would be massively appreciated. And if you haven't seen our Wildcard 28 strategy video yet, make sure you check that out. That was uploaded last night, and it's a great video for those of you guys thinking about wildcarding this week. We might even be able to convince people who previously were not going to wildcard to actually wildcard instead. It's a big one. Check it out. And aside from that, thank you so much for watching once again. Stream this evening, and I'll see you later, mates. Bye-bye.